Everyone to the executive committee meeting for the Clean Power Alliance for Thursday, April 17th, starting the meeting at 1:32 p.m. And we'll start out with a call to order and roll call. So I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll note here, Chair Klein-Lopez is present. Committee Member Maloney. Okay, I don't see Committee Member Maloney at this time. Committee Member Gold.
Here.
Committee Member Santangelo.
Here.
Committee Member Koksar.
Here.
Committee Member Montero.
Present.
Vice Chair Horvath. I will note Vice Chair Horvath.
Here.
He's waving.
Thank you. Committee Member Crosswhite.
Here.
Committee Member Parkhurst is unable to make it today. Vice Chair Lopez. Okay, Vice Chair Lopez absent, but we do have a quorum.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I don't see any members of the public on the Zoom, and I'm assuming that we don't have any members in any of the remote locations unless I hear otherwise.
I don't believe we received any requests for public comment, either here or in any of the other remote locations.
All right, well then we will move on to the consent agenda, which is one item, minutes from our last XCOM meeting. So unless I have any corrections, I'll take a motion to approve.
So move. Montero.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Director Montero and a second by Director Santangelo to approve the consent agenda. Chair Klein-Lopez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee Member Maloney? Okay. Committee Member Gold?
Yes.
Committee Member Santangelo?
Yes.
Committee Member Koksar?
Yes.
Committee Member Montero?
Aye.
Vice Chair Horvath?
Abstain.
Committee Member Crosswhite?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Lopez? All right, this motion passes.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to our regular agenda and I'll turn it over to our CEO, Ted Bardicke. It's a little loud here, so I'm just going to go on mute, but it's all yours, Ted.
Great. I don't have a lot to, there's a lot going on both in CPA and the world, but I don't have a lot to report to the committee, with the exception of page 8 of your agenda pack is a draft agenda of the upcoming board retreat. It's something that Deborah and I have worked on pretty closely. We've got invitations out to 3 of our federal reps, Reps Liu, Chu, and Brownlee, to see if they would attend and kick off the event. We'll do an icebreaker, and then the 2 real substantive items are long-term product content targets and how we might like to proceed with on the issues of asset ownership, which came up at the last retreat, and so we've been working hard on areas where that may make sense. We know some areas where we don't think it makes sense, but we do have a couple of viable ideas that we would like to share with the board, and get feedback and have discussion, and then we'll try to wind up with a lunchtime sort of Q&A, which really worked well as a format last time, but focusing on the potential reauthorization or redesign of California's cap and trade program. So I think what 2 requests, if you have questions, ideas, feedback, please reach out to me and Deborah together so we can incorporate those as she and I work on agenda. That's the first request. The other request is that we may different staff who are working on some of these items may want to pull one or two or more of you separate view of some of the things that we'd like to share, just to get some initial feedback, areas of concern, just, some advice, and both for our benefits to make sure that we're hitting the right notes, but also to, create some foundation of knowledge. So we'll reach out separately on those items if it's warranted as we develop the materials. And that's all I've got for the operations report.
Any questions for Ted? All right. If not, kick it right back over to you.
Okay, so agenda overview. We've got a couple of items, one where we're proposing to accept money and one where we are proposing to give out money. The first one being this equitable decarbonization grant MOU with LA County. And that one, I'd kind of put maybe 50-50 that it's going to make it to the board in May. A lot of work back and forth with them, particularly on not only the scope of work, but that overall grant, which covers a vast territory across Southern California, not just LA County, is a mix of federal and state funds. And we have successfully made sure that our scope of it is the part that's funded only from the state funding side, so that we're not at risk, or we've reduced risk as much as possible in terms of what's going on at the federal level. The second item is just a follow-up. We've executed MOUs with two multi-craft core curriculum pre-apprenticeship workforce development programs here in LA County. We continue to make progress with some entities in Ventura County. I put this one at maybe less than 50% that it gets to the May board, more likely in June. And Supervisor Lopez, I may be reaching out to you to help us get over a couple of issues with that in the communication with the trades in Ventura County. Your assistance may be necessary here.
I'll be ready for you, Ted.
Okay, that's great. And then the last item on consent is our engagement in the regulatory space, particularly around what's going to happen to the PCIA, and needing to be heavily engaged in that, as we are every year. There are two items on the regular agenda that we'll discuss today. One is rates, the other is the budget. The third item that's listed there, potential energy storage agreement, RA only, with a battery developer, that has hit a snag or two, and will not be on the May agenda. So we know now we're just not going to get that across the finish line. Any questions on the consent items before we move on to the two special or two presentations?
I don't see any.
All right.
I'm just excited about the Building Decarb program and hope everybody
Yeah.
promotes it to all of your communities. And I'll say the same thing at a full board, because you just need to make sure that everybody takes advantage of it. It's exciting.
Great. Thank you. Yes. All right. Next item, rate setting approach. I'm gonna turn it over to Karen Schmidt, Senior Director of Rates and Strategy, to walk us through. I think, the good news here is all options involve reducing rates. um, and so that's just the kickoff. And Karen will walk us through, what's going on, some of the considerations, and then we'll be asking for your thoughts on which of the two options we should recommend to the board. All right, Karen, go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Go ahead to the next slide. So yes, we are going to be asking you at the end of this presentation for a recommendation on the rate setting approach that the board will consider for approval at its May 1st meeting. And of course, that approach will be used to guide the actual rate setting itself that the board and the rates that the board would adopt at its June 5th meeting. As similar to the pattern of past years, our recommendation includes selecting a total bill comparison levels for residential and small and medium business customers to support our competitiveness and financial goals, and updating subset rates based on our current cost of service. A reminder that all of the numbers in this presentation are preliminary and subject to change. We'll be updating our financial projections between now and when the rates are actually set. And we will also have SCE's June 1 rates in hand when it comes time to finalize the rates. So next slide. So here's our overall process. Similar to past years, we started in the fall with looking at cost of service projections, load forecasting, and of course the outlook for the rates environment, in particular the PCIA and SCE generation rates. And we've had a fair amount of conversation with you about that. And of course, the board decided to make an interim rate adjustment in March. But here we are now back to our normal annual rate setting process. Go ahead to the next slide. So just a overview and reminder of the key considerations that are going into the options that we're bringing for your consideration. First, the board and staff established our product content approach and targets for this year and next year, calendar year. And so all the options that we're presenting are based on continuation of that strategy through the end of the coming fiscal year. The other key considerations, we've looked at and updated the product price differentials between our three rate products based on our current cost of service. And the options that we're presenting, you'll see a small increase in the differential between lean and clean. This is primarily a result of the cost of lean power going down as a result of resource adequacy and brown power prices falling. Renewable energy prices have been going down as well, but not as fast. So it's not that 100% green is getting more expensive. It's that lean has gotten less expensive relatively. As Ted mentioned, we're expecting that both of the options we're presenting represent a small rate reduction, and that will keep us competitive with SCE at least through the end of 2025. We expect under either of the options that we're presenting that we are going to approach or hit the board's maximum reserve target of 50%, either in the next fiscal year or the one after that. And we also know that the SCE rate roller coaster is going to be perhaps particularly bumpy in the next year. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how that is informing our thinking about rates for the coming year. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so let's dive into the options. So first, in terms of the majority of our customers, the vast majority of our customers who are residential and small and medium business, we've framed two options for your consideration, both of which keep us competitive with SCE, both of which represent a small rate reduction, and both of which help move us toward that 50% reserve target. The first option, which we've termed the lower reserve option, would represent a slight reduction in the total bill comparison. So a 3% discount for lean power, a 1% discount for clean power, and green at a 5% premium. The higher reserve option, which would result in a little bit higher contribution to net position and a greater probability of approaching that 50% reserve target in the next fiscal year, would have lean power at a 2% discount, clean at parity, and green at a 6% premium. And just to note that the ranges on the financial metrics here are a reflection of, we know that there will be, some volatility in energy market and prices, weather events, electricity consumption. So that's the range is there to remind you of that. Next slide. So what this would look like for residential customers. And although the dollar amounts would be a little bit different for a small business, the direction would be the same. Lean and clean power customers under either option would see a small decrease in their total bills on the order of $4 to $6 per month. 100% green customers at worst would see no change in their bills, or under the lower reserve option would see a small decrease, on average about $2 a month reduction in their bills. Next slide. So as you know, we have this category of customers that we internally refer to as subset rates. These are large commercial and industrial, pumping and agriculture, and street lighting rates. They are a small number of customers, less than 10,000 customers, or 1% of our load. 1% of our customers. They are, some of them are pretty large loads, so they are a larger fraction in terms of load. Since we launched, we've set these rates based on cost of service, because doing otherwise would mean we are not meeting their cost of service, and those customers would be subsidized by our residential and small business customers. And it has meant that their bill comparisons have been higher over the years. Those comparisons have improved over time, and we're happy to report that under either of the scenarios or options that we're presenting for the next fiscal year, we're expecting that most subset customers come July 1 will have at least one rate option that is at a total bill discount to SCE. So this is good news. Next slide. So let's talk about the competitive outlook for this year and next. So, either of the scenarios we're presenting come July 1 have us in a strong competitive position, similar to where we've been the last couple of years. As you may recall, last October, SCE's generation rates dropped because of their the ERA trigger owing to $740+ million over collection by SCE the previous year. That generation rate decrease will reverse this October. So their generation rates will come back up, which means that with no change to our rates, as of October 1, CPA's rates will be very competitive with SCE under either of these options. As you can see, lean and clean are at a significant discount under both options, and 100% green is only at a very small premium to SCE come October 1. So that's good news. On the other hand, the CPUC is currently considering changes to parts of the PCIA calculation methodology. You've already heard a little bit about this. And these changes combined with movements in market energy prices could have the effect of increasing the PCIA rates that our customers pay and decreasing SCE's generation rates beginning in January. We don't know yet how big those changes are going to be, but the outcome could mean both an increase in our customers' bills because of the PCIA rates going up and a worsening of our competitive position. In fact, the discounts that we're projecting starting October could reverse into premiums relative to SCE across all of our rate products and rate classes. And so as we did this year, depending on how things turn out, the board may want to again be looking at the possibility of an interim rate adjustment in the new year. Next slide. So just a word about our 3 new communities launching service in October, locking out of Flint Ridge, Linwood, and Port Hueneme. The board, of course, adopted a rate setting approach for these communities. The board adopted this in December in preparation for communication with the soon-to-be new customers in those communities and their decision-making process around choosing a preferred rate option. And so the approach that the board adopted was to, for residential and small and medium business customers, to keep the total bill comparisons at the same levels that the board adopted for existing communities for the current fiscal year. So that's a 1% bill discount for lean, clean power at parity, and 100% green at a 5% bill premium. And then for subset customers, the approach that was approved would hold subset bill comparisons at or below the levels that were established in July 2024 for subset customers in existing communities. The one thing we noted back in December when the board adopted this policy was that depending on what was happening with subset rates overall, that we might want to consider adjusting the subset rates downward. And in fact, as I said, subset rates are getting more competitive. And so the board can consider directing staff to adjust the rates based on cost of service to the lower comparison levels. So next slide. The next slide is just a recap. So to recap, we're recommending that the board adopt total bill comparisons for residential and small business rates, and have offered the 2 options, the low reserve option and the higher reserve option for your consideration. We are also recommending to update subset rates based on current cost of service and the reserve option selected above. And that similarly that we set subset rates based on cost of service, set subset rates for the new communities based on cost of service, provided that those comparisons don't exceed the levels that were approved by the board in July 2024 for subsets in existing communities. Next slide. So again, today we are asking that the executive committee and the executive community recommend a rate setting approach for the board's consideration in May, either the lower reserve option or the higher reserve option, and along with the updating of subset rates. And again, that approach will inform the final rate setting and the rates that we bring to the board for approval in June, along with adoption of the budget for the next fiscal year. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, any last thoughts, Ted, before I open it up to questions? And maybe we can turn the screen sharing off. Unless people want to keep it up to see the graph.
Yeah, I'll just frame up that I think we are really excited to bring either of these options where staff's comfortable with either of them. I think the real thing that is having us even say let's have an option that hits the reserve targets this year is the worry about next year. In terms of what that might happen with the PCIA, and to make sure that we had a adequate war chest to reduce rates in the spring if we needed to, if we were out of whack. I think that's really the sort of what led us to be proposing that in the first place, is that uncertainty, and there's lots of uncertainty in the world. We were able, if you recall, to forego $75 million of revenue this year because we're in a good financial place. I think either of these options put us in a good financial place. If we were to have to do a rate reduction, put us in a good financial place for next year. It's just a question of how big the hole would be then that you might have to dig yourself out of in subsequent years. So I take the long view on this. That's, again, we're very comfortable with either one of these options.
I love that we're talking about hitting reserves at all, that's even that's even on the table for the first time in all these years. It's very exciting, and also relieved actually that these options are as close as they are. They're actually not that extreme in the difference. So look forward to hearing the questions and or comments. I see Supervisor Horvath has her hand up.
Thank you. I'm sensitive to bill increases given the world we're all living in. And, I know that we are serving a diverse variety of constituencies at our table. And if my math is right, we're looking at, about a $2 difference for the average bill. And so when I factor that in, it seems to me there's a lot of upside for us to be looking at a higher reserve rate to weather a storm in future years, as opposed to, expecting that, this is the worst that it's going to be, sorry to say. I think this, taking this potential opportunity to strengthen our reserves might be good, though I fully recognize the volatility of the PCIA and what that could mean for us. I am open, but I lean towards strengthening our reserves when we have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Julian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would second that. You know, at the low end of the contribution on the low scenario, I mean, $2 million, $2 million around here is a sneeze. So virtually, I mean, that would leave us flat at best with no contribution. And I don't think, as first off, I should have said, it's amazing that we're going to be at the 50% reserve. We love that. And thank you all for getting us there. And not to be a pig about it, but maybe we ought to think about raising it, but maybe a different day, the level of reserve. But more to the point, I really do think that the difference to the consumer is de minimis for the higher rates, and I think for us it makes a big difference. And you know, $50 million in this business, as we've all seen, really is kind of a moment in time. And so I would strongly support the higher rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, it was funny because I was thinking about the higher rates, you know, the higher option, right, for us, because I was thinking if we do this now, so starting July 1st, we will go with the higher rate, and then in October we'll do nothing, right? If the rates change, because I would not like for us to do rate adjustments in the middle of all this in the fall. And like Ted said, maybe then we can look at in the spring where we at. So that's what I'm thinking, maybe just hit them, you know, just the $2 now, the higher rates, and then we do nothing in October. The spice what the PCIA or the Edison or the CPUC do, and then we do nothing. And then we wait until the following year to adjust anything if we want to lower it in the spring, basis on our reserve. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just got a message from Susan that Santangelo that she got kicked off. She's trying to get back on. Any other comments? Jenny?
I think the one thing that I would say is if we do go with the high reserve option, that we're careful how we talk about it. Because just as we've been talking about it here, it makes it sound like it's the higher rate. But as I'm looking at it compared to March 25, it's a very similar rate. And so it seems it's a rate, it's an extension of what we have now, in order to keep the reserve higher, as opposed to a higher rate. It's a higher rate than we could potentially give at this moment, but it's not, it does, at least unless I'm reading this wrong, it would be a similar rate to what we adjusted to in March of 25. So I think it would just be making sure that as we talk about it with the full board, that piece, if I'm understanding that right from this chart, that's clear, in order to give us that better reserve to be able to better respond if something happens with the PCIA that makes us less competitive later in the year. So that would be my initial thought. It would be nice to be able to be even more competitive now, but given the uncertainty of the PCIA and how that has not always been friendly to us, that maybe making ourselves more able to respond to that if we hopefully don't need to.
Yeah, and I'll just, Jenny, since you kind of raised the question, I'll just confirm that yes, under the higher reserve, we're actually decreasing rates from where they are for all products, and increasing competitiveness for all products.
Yeah, so I think just making sure that that's clear, because as people were talking, I heard something about the higher rates, and I think it's the higher reserve. Just making sure that that's clear.
Very good point. Susan, I see you're back. Any comments? Or Rita, any comments? There she is.
Hi, I'm back. I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties today. Um, can you put up the screen that shows the high and the low so that I know which one I'm talking about?
Yes. Coming right up.
Thank you so much.
I think back one up.
Yeah, that'll do it.
There you go.
Okay, so my question is, if we go with the lower reserve option, does that put us in a better position come October to not have to do an interim rate change? Do we know that? Is that all real speculative?
What happens in October? Under no scenario are we looking at a interim rate adjustment in October. Things are only going to get better in October. Where we're
Okay,
where we're thinking that there might be a need for that would be post January, kind of like
Okay.
this year.
Mhm.
So these options in front of you, they will be this or better for at least 6 months.
okay,
The discussion while you were off was, whether you want to sort of accumulate somewhat of a war chest in order to do something in the spring if it were to be necessary.
okay. Okay, I'm leaning towards the high reserve option. I think it's a really good time to put some money away. Um, but yeah, that's where I'm leaning right now.
Great. Rita, any comments?
Under both, thank you, Madam Chair. Under both options, rates are going to get reduced. I think there's going to be a lot of uncertainty moving forward. So having a little bit extra reserves to cover what might come has worked well for us in the past. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we've heard from everyone. Jenny, you have another comment?
Well,
Before
and
I-
Vianney, I think
before I
we haven't heard from Vianney
Oh,
either.
okay.
Yeah, I would
Supervisor,
just say
and then I'll go
ditto.
back to Jenny.
Yeah, I'll just say ditto. I think everyone's covered it, and I also support the higher reserve option and agree. I think it's a good time to just plan ahead. Thank you.
Great. Jenny, another comment?
Yeah, the only thing I was trying to think of is, and this is just a technicality, is if there's some other word other than higher that we can put with that second reserve option, just
Option
so that
one,
we-
option two.
right, just so that we don't accidentally say higher rates. And so either, maybe it's like target reserve or
Strengthened reserve could be
I don't
an
know.
option.
right, something like, so
Mhm.
that was my only thought on that, is maybe there's some different language around those two reserve options. Just so that we don't accidentally equate the second one with higher rates, because that's not what we're doing.
Yep. 100% agree. And I'm on board with all of the comments, like Ted. I've taken the long view on this. I like the fact that we had the flexibility to keep our constituents' rates somewhat stable last year when things got a little crazy. And to Susan's point, this is a good moment where we can beef up those reserves without a lot of impact, with very minimal impact on our ratepayers. So I agree. And I'm not sure if we need a formal vote on this, Gabby, but it certainly sounds like we have consensus of what to recommend with edited language per Jenny's point, which I think staff understands.
Yeah, let's get a formal vote.
Okay.
Just formalize the stance of the executive committee for the board recommendation.
Okay, Matt, did you have something to add?
I could ask, I just had a question, clarifying question, but you all can vote, and I don't want to interrupt that.
Well, we can
Oh,
go
okay.
ahead, ask your
Sure.
question. I don't
Sure.
think it's going to change our.
Oh no,
you're not going to sink in the vote. Don't worry.
I think Vice Chair Horvath had a suggestion on what we might call the other option? And
You didn't hear
we
it?
couldn't quite hear because
Okay.
there was a little crosstalk, but I have a feeling it's a good one, so don't want to miss.
Well, that's very kind. I was just saying it could be the strengthened reserve option.
Okay.
So that way we're, acknowledge the action is around what we're doing for our reserves as opposed to what we're doing to our rates, which is de minimis.
Great, thank you.
All right, with that, I'll take a motion in a second.
I made a motion as Supervisor Horvat mentioned. Please.
Sorry, did I
think
miss
I-
a second?
I think I heard Montero and Gold.
Oh, thank you for that. Okay. I have a motion by Director Montero and a second by Director Gold to recommend the higher or strengthen reserve option to the Board of Directors.
Yeah.
Chair Klein Lopez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Committee Member Gold?
Yes.
Committee Member Santangelo?
Yes.
Committee Member Kokshar?
Yes.
Committee Member Montero?
Yes.
Vice Chair Horvath?
Aye.
Committee Member Crosswhite?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Lopez?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This motion passes unanimously.
Great. All right, Ted, it seems like you can make the budget outlook almost as long as you'd like. Got lots of time.
All right. So first look at operating expense budget for next year. Just the highlights that the finance committee next week will see the full breakdown, but we wanted to give you an early look at what the sort of how the numbers are shaping up. There's a couple of areas in particular that we'll need your guidance on as we move through this process. I mean, we need your guidance on all of it, but there's definitely some needs to have and other nices to have, and so we want to make sure that we understand what's what there. So as I mentioned, we're talking about this today. It'll go finance next week, and then back to the board where we'll do a modified version of this presentation. We'll go then CAC, XCOM, finance, and the board over the next several weeks. It's been a lot of work here internally. Next slide, please. So one of the things we do a bottom-up budgeting process, but we also do sort of a bottom-up, what are our organizational priorities from the staff's perspective. We do this every year. I think no one is more equal than the other. However, the items in bold on program, customer, community member agency programs, and increasing customer engagement, internal systems processes, continuing to support and invest in our high performing and diverse staff, always looking at where we can minimize risk, whether it's on the cybersecurity side, which is ever growing, and you never feel like you're totally caught up in that space, or on the legal side, and then really trying to provide opportunities for statewide leadership. These are the ones that actually have operating budget impacts this year. So that's why they're in bold, and I take the moment to highlight them. Next slide. In terms of the context that we're working in, just for most of you, this is not new, but just the reminder that we're we're in charge of managing about $1.2 billion in energy costs. And it's 94% of our overall costs. So what we're talking about today is the other 6%. And really a lot of that other 6% is spent on managing the 94%. And where we can find opportunities to be better at the management of the 94, we can bring value in terms of lower costs and therefore lower rates to our customers. So as you know, right now we're managing a falling cost environment with that focus in terms of rates on that January 1 potential PCIA change. While we are managing the falling cost environment, we have a lot of uncertainty. If you want my take on uncertainty in general, I put out a column today and as part of our newsletter. But this is not, we're having to show a lot of mental fortitude at this point in terms of staying focused on what we can and do and how we prepare for that uncertainty. So it's just a lot of time and energy on that, as well as obviously figuring out how to deal with, here in California, affordability in general. So we're really looking this year to not just develop the customer programs that can save money and reduce peak load, which again helps us reduce our costs, but the delivery of them. You'll see that the customer programs budget is increasing, but it's not increasing as much as the money we need to spend on marketing to make sure that customers are aware and take advantage of them. And I'll give you some examples of that as we go on. So it's both develop, but also deliver. Continuing to, as I mentioned, to invest in the systems and the people that manage risk. And then, seeking out the innovative business and policy measures that can impact the affordability and resiliency. And some of that we'll talk about in at the board retreat, some of which we've talked about already with wildfire and how we can respond in a nimble way there. So in the budget in various places are potential, should we see a business opportunity to be able to invest in those people and systems to carry those out, as well as for unknowns like what is stage 2 of our wildfire response. We've already got stage 1 in the works, but we know we will want to do more. Next slide, please. So I will put your eyes towards that third bullet, which is that we're looking at about a 14% increase in operating expenses, just over $9 million. And really that increase is concentrated in staffing, communications, and programs, just as I mentioned. All other expense line items are a single digit, collectively a single digit increase of just over 2 million. And these are, line items that are important. Technical consultants, legal, G&A, which has software and IT and all of that. But we've really been able to keep those overall, pretty flat, and really looking at these 3 main areas for increase. Next slide, please. So with that, I wanted to note some highlights in these areas, in those 3 areas. So first, let's go to programs. So I mentioned investing in existing programs. Couple of programs that we've got in development, but we're pretty close to our full suite. And so now it's, increasing the budget for areas where we're seeing good customer uptake, and also, which are certainly these three programs you see, but also really trying to calibrate what our expected spend is with what the budget is. And I'll just say an example. Last year, we spent only 25% of our program budget. This year, we're tracking to spend about 50% of our program budget. And we're really trying to, both by increasing certain programs, but also increasing on the communications and marketing side, to raise that spend level more to like 75 or 80% at worst. So you'll see in the programs budget as we develop it, increases in power share, increases in EV smart charge. This has been an amazingly successful program. In its first 6 weeks, we got close to 1,000 customer signups. And this sort of points to the value of the micro targeting of customers. And we're hoping to, increase that ninefold by the end of the year. We are seeing some decrease, mostly due to lower administrative costs in the solar and battery access program. And then, as I mentioned, the better alignment between sort of program budget and timing of spend. This is in the energized communities one, where that works on a reimbursable basis. So the city would decide how they want to spend the money, but then it might take 9 months for us to get actually an invoice from them for the work that's done. And similarly, on the timing shifts, instant AC savings, the commitment there was to spend $6 million over 3 years. We're already in year 2, and we're just really about to market the program. So I think the commitment there is still the $6 million, but it may take longer than the next 2 fiscal years. It will take longer than the next 2 fiscal years to spend that money. So we'll keep budgeting for it and try to get as many folks to sign up as possible. Next slide, please. Don't expect you to read this, but it's in, well, you can read it. I'm not going to talk to it because it's a lot of numbers on a small thing, but it's there in your pack to see how the programs really rely on other parts of the budget to be successful. Next slide, please. So that's of a piece. Communications budget increase by around 50% or 2.5 million, or sorry, 2.1 million. Half of this growth is direct spend on program marketing, with another 30% on customer acquisition, sort of ancillary stuff that help customer acquisition on the programs, with website enhancements, market research, and then on the ground outreach from CBOs. We will continue to do the core branding efforts. Maybe you've heard ads on the radio or heard them on YouTube or however you consume your media these days. That is important to do and continue to do so that people know who we are. It has paid dividends in terms of brand recognition, but it's relatively flat in terms of the increased program spend. One thing that is in the communications budget that we certainly would like your feedback on, and is a nice, cool thing to have that came out of the last board retreat, was a mobile education unit. The CPA truck, as it was talked about. As we've explored what to do with that idea, it's become clear that the best thing to do, the way to deliver this is through a turnkey operation, because you start to get a truck. We don't have a city yard. We don't have a person to drive it. How do you program it? So we certainly went against this idea of buying something, and instead working with vendors who do this for their business. And we've gotten some quotes and ideas, or not quotes, but indicative pricing. And basically for something around 50 unique events, so you go to 50 unique events a year, it costs about just about over $600,000. So in the draft budget right now is $320,000, which is the half of the fiscal year, because we would still have to RFP for it and all of that. So if you go to the next slide, this is kind of in the realm of what we're talking about. It's a booth, it's a truck. We don't exactly know what it is, but it is this mobile education experience that we would contract for. But interested in your thoughts around this, because you gave us the idea last year and we ran with it. Next slide. I'll just say one more thing. For those of you who've been out to our Earth Day events, we have a small interactivity, smaller interactive energy model. Rita, maybe you saw it in Carson. Was it at Carson? I don't know. But we've got one that Alex Montero saw it. You and Hawthorne and Carson compete in their Earth Day celebrations. So, but it has proven really interesting, especially for the kids, to really learn how the energy system works. So, Rita, did you have your hand up there?
Oh, sure. I just this mobile unit is super cool. The only ask is just if it could be electric or have a battery generator, and like if it's driven by a vehicle, that vehicle be electric. 100%.
The technical specifications of this will be quite, if we do it, will be quite detailed in terms of being environmentally friendly and an example of who we are.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
And Hawthorne, I guess, beat us out on that cool exhibit.
All right. All right. Next slide, please. So this is just another way of looking at the communications budget. You see in green are the direct program spend increases. You've got that mobile education unit there in the middle. And then those three items that I mentioned are sort of ancillary to programs. We don't call them programs, but they really help us with the delivery on the programs. And then the all other non-program spending being relatively flat. Next slide, please. So finally, with staffing, had a good year in terms of both hiring but also reducing turnover, and looking at 6 new positions down from 7 plus 4 unallocated. We did this unallocated last year for potential mid-year hires based on need, and found it very useful. We ended up allocating them, 1 to power supply, 1 to communications, 1 to programs, and 1 administrative. But we didn't do them until much later in the year. We didn't actually allocate those or do the hiring until much later in the year, so it held down expenses. We're also looking with these unallocated to start a rotational program where we would bring probably new graduates in various areas. We're targeting first finance and power supply to do a rotation through those different divisions in those areas, and kind of train up some new folks so that we don't have to steal everyone from other CCAs or SCE. Like last year, most of, 2/3 of the proposed increase in the staffing costs is the full year impact of this current year's new hires, next year's COLA and retention efforts. It's a 16% increase. We'll see on the next slide that it's continuing to decelerate. I think Susan Santangelo said, let's keep decelerating those costs, as our finance committee chair last year, and we're working on that. If you could go to that next slide. You'll see on the right the staffing budget growth rates over time continuing to fall. I'll say that there's, we haven't gone through this full budget yet with the fine-tooth comb. There's potentially still some savings or fine-tuning to be done in this area. Next slide, please. So just, headline, 6% of costs. We're really working on the program's communication and continuing to make progress on our good staff, which is at the end of the day what really can drive lower costs and rates and savings for individual customers. Lower down in the presentation is metrics that compare us to the other CCAs as we've done in the past. We'll be going over those in more detail with the finance committee next week, as well as look at sort of current organizational chart and headcount, as well as a list of where we think we would, assuming a budget is passed, where the areas where we would add staff. So that concludes my presentation. Happy to take questions, input, thoughts.
Thank you very much, Ted. I don't think it's ever a bad idea to remind the board that 94% of our operations are, power. So especially, with the new members, it's just always a good reminder that we're only talking about 6% and the relativity of that. Questions for Ted? Supervisor Horvath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions are really around the marketing piece, but I do want to acknowledge how glad I am to see our progress in staffing, to see, the choices that we're having to make are, really reflective of the maturity of where we are and the progress that we've been making as an agency. So I'm really glad to see that. In terms of increased investment in marketing in order to make sure that program usage increases, how are we evaluating success? And how are we making sure that marketing tactics aren't just sort of out there, but actually targeting the audiences who will most benefit from and then most likely use these programs? What are we doing to have it be a more refined and targeted marketing effort?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two ways, which are not contradictory. But the first one I'll say is that we are getting much better at the micro targeting part of things. So the EV Smart Charge one is an example of that, where we went to the DMV and we got a list of every car owned by every address that we serve. And then we looked at what kind of car that was, and was it an EV? And then we marketed directly to those people.
Great.
And we got 1,000 signups in 6 weeks. And we will still have to hit those folks multiple times, because I know there are folks who have EVs who didn't sign up for it. Our board chair will hide her face.
I did get the second reminder though, so you are targeting the right people. Just got to sit down and do it.
So we are getting better at that. The next level of that is like, how do we start targeting the folks who we know can most benefit from our programs? So we're actually starting a big collaboration internally, breaking down silos between our load forecasting team, which knows how much each customer uses, and our program marketing team to say, we need to hit, it might be better to hit this customer up 8 times to sign up because they're going to really benefit versus hitting 8 customers once.
Well,
so
to the chair's example, I would say we might also want to consider, you can call it whatever you want, but some sort of concierge effort to, help people who know they want to do it, but are very busy and stretched thin and don't really know how to necessarily do it easily. Like, if this interests you, call this number and we'll have somebody help you do it. Might be a good investment of resource, as much as I love hearing the micro targeting. That's really useful. And I think you're right about repetition. And I think, to me, I think in programs like this, it's usually either people don't know that they're eligible, or when they are eligible, they don't know where to start and how to get it done.
Okay, that's a great suggestion, and we'll sort of try to figure out. I think that the interactivity, the other place I was going to go was the interactivity on the website. Again, is one of the easier ways. So type in who you are, what kind of person you are, and we'll tell you which program. Right there, and then the sign up button is there.
Great.
I think the other thing that we're learning is, it's a big region. We did focus groups for the second or third time this year, but we delved more on the focus groups less into attitudes and more into what are you interested in. And so, investing in that market research is providing lots of learnings about, what geographic regions we should be targeting for different programs. A lot of that is based on, is it a renter or a homeowner, multifamily, single family, those kinds of things. We're just getting better at it.
And what are the metrics for success that you're using to measure the mobile unit?
Good question. It's going to be this year at our tables. It's going to be, have you heard of CPA? What's your view of CPA? But it's really it's an education piece. How many people walk away who visited, ending up signing up for one of our programs, is a metric. I'll be honest, we haven't gotten down into the exact performance metrics or metrics of success with the mobile unit. But if we decide to go forward with that, point taken, and we should hone in on that.
Yeah, it just seems like it's a sizable investment for the increase in what we're putting into marketing. It's a significant percentage. And so I just like to know, I'm hearing enthusiasm and I don't want to shoot that down. But I just also recognize that it's a meaningful investment. And so I just want to make sure we get a return on it.
Yeah, well, we'll as we continue to talk about whether to fund that going forward at the board level, we'll come back with some thoughts about what the metrics will be.
Great, thank you.
Jenny, Director Crosswhite.
Yeah, I had similar questions and thoughts to I always want to call you supervisor. Anyway, I can't
Lindsay
think of
works. Lindsay works. That's fine.
I can't think of what
I
we
never
call
know in this
ourselves.
meeting,
I'm like, I sit on so many. I'm like, are we members? Are we anyway?
let's say in the XCOM we can call each other by first names. I'll be more formal at the board meeting. How's that?
But I have similar questions to what Lindsay had. And so I'm glad to hear that we're doing the targeting specifically around some of our harder to reach populations. Are we using the same tactics? And because part of what I was wondering is what efforts we've made to work with our partner agencies to have them help reach out, because like for an example in our city, like we know who some of those groups are that have connections to folks that might be eligible for those programs. And so I didn't know if do we have, as part of this effort, do we have toolkits that our cities could use to also help to push out information? So that's my question.
Yeah. So we do have toolkits for our programs. They're all on the member agency portal. And you folks are not the only folks who have access to the portal, but member agency staff, PIOs, those folks have, and so they're all there. They're available for download. I will say that the promotion of our programs by our member agencies, there's a wide range. Some do a lot, and we see that in customer program signups, and some agencies don't. And then there's a group in the middle. But I think to the extent that you all can encourage the folks who run your communications and marketing in your agencies to really pick those up, it does make, to your point, it does make a difference. We can see a direct correlation between people who use those toolkits and who signs up.
And so maybe I'm in a similar position with my portal that Deborah is with her EV app. We did figure out the EV app, but I still need to figure out the portal.
Okay.
Confessional. But it might not hurt to occasionally remind our board members that information is in the portal. And so that is one benefit of signing up for the portal if they haven't already signed up, and also letting their agencies know that information is there. And it does make a difference when they share it.
Okay, great suggestion. Thank you.
Julian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Ted, we don't spend all of the money we budget each year, do we?
Nope.
Do we carry it over year to year?
No, we budget, we start from the ground up there's a baseline, but we don't do carryovers, no.
So we return it back to the general fund.
Correct.
And we reallocate it in the next year.
That's right. I will say that there's a budget. There are contracts we've signed that extend over budget years. So some of it is locked in. It's not we don't start zero. But like our Calpine contract or some of our programs contracts. But yes, we reallocate every year.
So is there, if we're not using all of the money, and is there any program, let me ask you this way, is there any program where we have completely sold out and could use more money?
We'd love to be in that position.
So none of the programs have actually achieved that. We've over budgeted for every program we have.
Yeah, I don't want to say every single one. I have to, but by and large, we have over budgeted for programs compared to what we've been able to deliver. And I think one of the things we're trying to do this year, one of the reasons the program budget is not growing as much as it has, is we're trying to align with our, what customer uptake is and our capacity to spend better, so that we have a higher spend rate.
It's not a matter of our bandwidth, it's a matter of customer interest.
Acquisition, yeah. And yes,
Well, as a practical matter, why would we not hold the unspent money in some sort of reserve fund to either support other new programs or an expansion of programs that ultimately become very successful? Or what is the thinking about the reallocation annually?
I think and I'll give David a shot to weigh in here. But I'll say from my perspective, we want to be able to reallocate as we see the need. But I also think that we are learning that one of the biggest budget items is the items for our member agencies. And this is not to cast blame, but they are slower to spend our money than we had originally budgeted for so we are kind of holding it in reserve. We're maintaining those commitments, but we're stretching it out over longer times. David, do you want to jump in here? Oh, you're on mute.
I knew that. I think operationally, in terms of making sound commercial decisions, it makes sense to start fresh every year and think through what you want to do and how best to allocate agency funds, rather than sort of being beholden to decisions that were made previously that may no longer be the best allocation of funds. So I've encouraged and employed that approach for a decade at CCAs. I'm open to alternatives and happy to chat with you more about different ways of doing it, but that's the underlying logic.
Yeah, and I can understand that as it relates to a program. But it seems, I'm willing to be convinced to the contrary, but it seems to me that if we create a budget and we allocate a certain amount of money and we don't spend it for these sorts of programs, that it shouldn't necessarily be that we're going to just now re-include it in the budget and in effect inflate our operational budget by the fact that we're putting these dollars back in it. It seems that if we were to hold the money aside, even for a different program, that ultimately we could create another reserve account for subsequent programs in future years.
We could do that, and I'm happy to think that through.
Yeah, I think I can only think of one year. Maybe I'm wrong and maybe I'm imagining it. But I do think we had a year where we were tight enough that we actually had to back away from some of the programmatic commitments we had made, and because we needed that money just to run the organization. Hopefully we'll never get to that point again, but this would give us a little bit of buffer for those sorts of things. Just a thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And I'll say there's a couple of programs that we're doing that informally for right now. One is the Energized Communities program, where there was a $10 million commitment. We're not actually putting aside the money, but we're saying, reminding you that there's that commitment. We just think it's going to take longer to spend the money. And the same with that instant AC savings program. But to David's point, there's lots of mechanical ways we could do that beyond just our word.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Alex?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, Ted, that actually was a good presentation, to tell you the truth, because 6% out of the out of the 100 is very good for operation costs. So that it's outstanding that you know, we as a big organizations we are, right? We're using 6% for everything else, right? 94% is all go towards purchase of energy. So that's fantastic for me. Now, when my head starts spinning when Dr. Gold mentioned about money. That fiscal stabilization fund, that's equal to the reserve fund?
No, not quite. The net position plus the fiscal stabilization fund is equal to our reserves.
So this year, so we're looking at a good net position towards the end of fiscal year, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, you know, we do a lot of program for communities, you know, especially the low-income communities. So I'm happy to see that budget continue to do so, especially put more money on communication. That is great. And like Rita, you know, I do like that RV scenario because I have seen some of those trucks, you know, in school, for example, where they have stamps truck, like for math and science, you know, things. And then even I saw some of them sometimes like game trucks. So, and those attract a lot of people to get inside and get information. So I think that could be a good thing to think about. Even when I divide the 50 events, it's about 12,800 per event. So it's not that bad to put it out there in our community. So that's pretty good. The other thing that I was thinking, oh yeah, I was one of those customers who did receive the card on the mail for my Tesla, and I did join the app, so I do have the app. The app is very active, so I keep tracking of my you know, energy and when I'm going to plug in and when I'm not. So it's pretty cool. I like it. And
All right, I'm gonna do it this weekend.
yes, do it because it's fantastic. And the other one that I want to talk about, yeah, the portable. The portable, to tell you the truth, this past Saturday, I asked, I forgot her name. She was at the Earth Day, and I said, look, I've been having trouble to log into the portable. So the following Monday, I got all my credential again. So I did log in. So, and that portable, it is a fantastic tool. So I'm encouraging everybody to check it because it's good. So for me, the budget looks pretty cool, pretty good. So, and then with potential that we continue to grow, and that is good. And then it's just a way of us measure success. So that maybe we'll talk about that at the board retreat. Thank you.
Great. All right, you've all given me my motivation to do my homework this weekend. But I am on the portal though, so that's good. And we'll follow up with Kara, I'm sure, on that. If there are no other questions, I think, Ted, you've got some feedback, you've got the marching orders, and we can end this meeting on time. So any other committee member comments? All right.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Oh yeah, for sure. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Yeah.
Our next XCOM meeting will be May 15th. Next the board meeting, of course, is the 1st. And look forward to seeing you all then.
In the desert.
Thank you.
Bye, Ted.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Time is 2:56. We're now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.